So I think it's really going to be a time to try new things, probably fail at some of them, but then see what worked, what didn't, and really retool ourselves and get ready for next year.
Today's episode is brought to you by Relic. As many of you know, I own an advertising agency called Relic, and we work specifically with tourism destinations. If there's any of you that are struggling with what to do next, or you've tried agencies that don't specialize in tourism, or if you've been using the local flavor for years and years and you're just looking for something new, I would say give us a call. Give us the opportunity to take a look at your plans, see what you're doing. Use our tourism knowledge and industry specialty to examine everything from your brand to your tactical execution and make recommendations of how to help. We'll do that assessment for free. We'll give you those recommendations for free. And if you like what we say, maybe you can hire us to execute on those plans. So kind of a risk-free opportunity to have us take a holistic look at everything you're doing, provide some recommendations, and you can kind of see us in action. If you're interested in having us do something like that, please send me an email directly at adam@relicagency.com. I would love to set that up with my team. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker. I'm excited to be with you today. We've got a great show, somebody that I've met recently, and a longtime listener of the show. So it'll be good to get his kind of feedback and thoughts on not only the show, but the state of the industry and some of the things he's been doing to keep himself sharp. But our guest today is Greg Desrosiers. And Greg, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Adam.
Greg, I appreciate you joining us today, and it'll be fun to kind of get into you and your experience and what you've done in the industry. But as an avid listener of the show, you know we like to ask a few questions early on just to kind of get the juices flowing. So you're no different. Greg, tell me, what is your dream destination?
Sure. So I think I have a top two on my list. And number one is definitely Ireland. It's the sort of my family's homeland, half full-blood.
Okay.
Well, everyone's full-blooded Irish. I got half of it, and I got the French, obviously. But definitely want to go there. Top things there would obviously be to visit the Guinness Brewery, catch a rugby match, hopefully, and then just kind of explore Dublin and the countryside to see the city, see the coast. Definitely want to get there soon, and it might be a honeymoon trip, sort of.
Oh, you got a wedding coming up?
We do.
Good for you.
So hopefully that's in the cards.
Well, congrats. I'm hitting so this Saturday. Boy, I almost got it wrong and said Friday. This Saturday will be my 13-year anniversary with my wife, and
congratulations.
Really excited about that. But anyway, I guess I made that about me.
No.
Tell me a little bit about. So it would be a honeymoon trip. What would be the key things that you want to show your new wife?
I think and we haven't done much planning. We've definitely agreed on sort of probably that, or maybe even a full couple weeks to do the UK and just hop around the islands. But I'm sure there's no shortage of things to do. So I think the countryside and the cliffs, I've seen a lot of people that have gone, I think it's going to be a key highlight.
Yeah. The pictures look amazing. You're not a golfer, are you?
I pretend to be when I'm on the course, but I don't think I can actually justify it by saying I am a golfer.
Well, even if you pretend to be, if you go out to Ireland, you got to at least play golf out there once, from what I hear.
I'm sure I'll give it a try.
Great. Okay. Now tell me, you said there's two. What's the second one?
So the second would be Portugal. I'm originally from the south coast of Massachusetts, and we have a rich Portuguese history here and a lot of Portuguese immigrants. So growing up with the food and the culture, so it would be fantastic to head over there, and especially the islands of the Azores and Madeira to really see what it's like.
I've had a couple of people bring up Portugal lately, and it really does sound amazing. It wasn't on my list. And so I had several questions about, what's the appeal, but man, some of the things to do and attractions that people have talked about, it really does seem like a pretty amazing destination.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I'm a little biased, but you cannot beat their food. I mean, it's something definitely to try once in your life.
And what kind of food is it? I mean, is it, I've spent some time in Brazil where they speak Portuguese, but I can't
Hmm.
imagine that the food is super similar, is it?
I'm not sure. I did take some Portuguese in college, and we learned actually Brazilian and I guess mainland. But it's a lot of seafood, obviously. Linguiça, so the sort of type of sausage.
Yeah.
Lots of spices, lots of shrimp. Shrimp Mozambique would be one of the go-to dishes, and that's just a bit of saffron with a broth, rice, and shrimp, and it's to die for.
I like it. Okay, I got to give that a try. It sounds like the food is fairly different, although they did have linguiça in Brazil.
Mm.
But the spices, in Brazil they cook just about everything with salt, and so the idea
Okay.
of spices sounds like Portugal has a pretty different palate there.
Yeah, lot of spice, lot of spicy food.
Awesome. Okay, well, good. How about places you've been, Greg? What's your favorite place you've ever been?
So my favorite place had to be New Orleans. We went down there this past December. I'm a huge New Orleans Saints fan, and that's actually where I proposed. So we were out there by the Sculpture Garden, by the Museum of Art. So definitely a trip to remember, and it was just fantastic to kind of go down there for the first time.
So, if you're a Saints fan, there's a graduate from my alma mater that you must have an interest in, and that's Taysom Hill from BYU.
Of course, he is the Swiss Army knife.
That's right. Hey, we haven't heard that enough from the announcers on the games, have we?
No, no, but definitely exciting to see. And he made it into the game a few times. Happened to go on a Monday night game, so where Drew Brees broke the all-time touchdown record. So it was exciting time to be in the dome.
Oh man, yeah. As if you're a fan of the Saints, that sounds like an amazing night to be there.
Oh, of course.
Well, I went down to New Orleans and I actually went to watch BYU play against LSU a couple years ago. And I got to tell you, it was less fun for me as a BYU fan than it sounds like it was for you as a Saints fan to attend.
I can see that. I can see that.
I think
Very passionate.
it's the most brutal beating we've taken in years, I think. So, well, that's awesome, Greg. It sounds like a fun trip down there to New Orleans, and I appreciate you giving us some background on some of your interests. I'd love to have you give us more of a general background on who you are and how you got into tourism.
Of course. So, like I said, I grew up in a city called New Bedford, Massachusetts. It's on the southeastern part of the state, and it's a gateway city, less than an hour from Boston, Cape Cod, and Providence, Rhode Island. So, lots of places to go. Um, Honestly, never thought I would end up where I am now in the tourism industry. I got my bachelor's degree in crime and justice studies with a minor in poli-sci from the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. So, I'm a little far off the mark from that.
I'd say so.
So while I was in school, I actually started as a news reporter and anchor for a local AM radio station, where I spent about 5 years there throughout school and then a little bit after graduation. That's where I really learned my joy of storytelling and specifically making important information accessible and consumable to people. So lots of long nights at city council meetings and the nitty gritty important stuff of like city politics that no one's going to really think about until they're going to either complain about it or praise it. So it was nice to see that information get out to the community in a way that they could understand and then have a conversation about it on the airwaves the next day. So following working at the radio station, I happened upon an internship in the spring of 2017 with the Massachusetts Executive Office of Technology Services and Security. Obviously a mouthful, as most state
Yeah.
organizations are. But I started there as a content strategist. That 3 month internship turned into about a 2.5 year contract, working full time to help during the state's overhaul and relaunch of the website, mass.gov. So that was a really interesting time. They moved essentially platforms from an old deprecated system to a brand new Drupal-based web system, which really democratized the way content was created and managed. So it used to be a case of you had to have a certain coder that you told what to put on the website. A lot of things didn't get edited much. A lot of things became stale. So now these subject matter experts have the tools to do it themselves, which then meant a lot of education from our part to teach them the right ways to do things, the wrong ways to do things, and to really get their buy-in because they were stakeholders, but they owned that content. So if anyone had anything that could have been improved, we couldn't just go in and change it, even though we had the technology to. We didn't have the governance. So a lot of the work was to get buy-in through data-driven practices and research that we've done on our end to show them why they should be changing their content or how to better improve it to just become better user experiences for their constituents. So
okay, so let me just jump in there then. So you started kind of as a writer and telling those stories, and then moved into more of a website consultation and development skill set.
Yeah, it was definitely not what was expected with even joining the internship. It seemed like it was more content creation, but it was a lot of just migration and kind of busy work essentially. But then even the role as a content strategist, which I had never even heard of until I was in the position with that title, it really required a lot of different hats to be worn and sometimes multiple at the same time. And it was really a lot more consultation than actually creating the content, which was different, but it was definitely exciting to really have the puzzles of how to make this content better and how to link things and just sort of to make it the best possible. So it was definitely an exciting time. And a lot of those roles and tools kind of followed me as I moved to my current position with the CVB.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. You moved from your role there to the CVB. Was that you saw an opening or were you referred to it? How did you get into the actual Convention and Visitors Bureau?
So it was a little bit of sort of looking around for something closer to home. So as my internship actually turned into a full-time contract, I had moved from Massachusetts to Rhode Island. So I was spending about 4 hours plus round trip every day for 2 years traveling to work, which was not terrible. Fun. Yeah. Comparing that now to my current commute of about under an hour round trip, it's fabulous. Yeah. But I just happened to see a tweet from our current president and CEO about her promotion. I had followed her on Twitter and everything, but just never really put two and two together. She posted that her current or previous role then was vacant, and they actually sort of changed it into a new role as a communication and marketing manager. So I just happened to apply. Luckily, I got the job, and it's been an exciting, almost not even a year yet. It will be a year next month. But it's a healthy mix of marketing, PR, and editorial duties among a bunch of other little things. I manage what I like to think of as our alternative social media channels. So LinkedIn, and actually have gotten us to embrace the use of Reddit a lot more. When I walked in, everyone had heard of it, didn't quite know what it was, but had the sort of negative connotations to it. But I think we've come around to really embracing it as a super helpful listening tool. And of course, it's free too. So it's spawned a lot of content ideas throughout the past year.
Awesome. Well, what about Providence, Warwick? Tell me a little bit about the destination as a whole.
Sure. So it's often overshadowed by our neighbors to the north and south. So we're a 50-minute drive from Boston, about a 3-hour drive from New York City, and less than an 8-hour drive for about 25% of the nation's population. So we have that drive market there. We have accessibility through the air from our Green International Airport in Warwick, and then Boston's Logan International. We also have the Amtrak that comes right into Providence Station. So super easy to get to here. We were founded in 1636 from Roger Williams when he was sort of kicked out of Massachusetts. But he settled upon the city on 3 rivers and just set up what's now a quaint New England town, but also has the amenities of a big city. So it's super walkable. You're within minutes whenever you're in the city of first-class dining, shopping, and accommodations. And it really just can't be beat. And it's really flourishing with lots of culture and academia as well. We have the PPAC, so the Providence Performing Arts Center, which has a lot of off-Broadway or those pre-Broadway musicals. So when they're doing a first run or kind of testing out a new show, sometimes they'll just pop in and do a week set there and then go off to Boston, New York, and the bigger cities.
Wow. So it sounds like, with the combination of having a diverse set of things to do, along with being so convenient and walkable and accessible from 25% of the population of the U.S. I mean, it sounds like you got a lot going for you there in Providence.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're really known for our food scene, and we have the Johnson and Wales University here. That's one of the top culinary educators, and we're huge on food, but there's so much more to do that you can only eat so much in a day. There's plenty of other things to check out in between those meals.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Well, tell me a little bit. So you were in the role for almost a year, and then everything, it hit the fan, right? Like COVID hit, and everybody was kind of trying to figure out what to do. How did it affect your role and what you've been up to?
Sure. So things changed pretty quickly once everything started to actually change. It went from week to week to day to sort of hour by hour. Our office closed down office work in early March. We moved to fully remote. And then there were 2 rounds of sort of layoffs because we're a nonprofit, but pretty much funded by the hotel tax, like many CVBs and our partners. So we are membership based as well. So
Okay.
it was sort of, and lack of a better term, to stop the bleeding. So 19 of our 25-person team were furloughed at the end of March. And slowly we're adding a few more back to our skeleton crew. But, the higher ups, so to speak, have been kind of manning the ship and keeping everything going on a day-to-day basis. But for most part, it's been a long and interesting just 3 months.
Yeah, and a tough situation to navigate, right? I mean, the industry's been hit so hard, and so many people throughout the industry have been furloughed or laid off. It's not unique to Providence, Warwick, and it sounds like you're optimistic that you're going to be getting back to kind of full workload and full time here soon.
Yeah. It's unclear of when soon is, of course, and when things are back to normal, which it doesn't look like that will be for probably a few years. I mean, one of our biggest hits was our convention center was turned into a makeshift field hospital, which will stay as such for at least the end of 2020. So that deals a big blow to those meetings we had scheduled. Even if there were ways to accommodate them through the new sort of virtual meetings and everything, there's just no way to even use that space. So it's a matter of waiting to when we can actually have things. So there's some hope over the horizon, of course, and the big thing for us is just our funding. With the PPP loans not actually covering our industry, it's hard to get that revenue source to then bring back our staff.
Yeah, makes sense. And really, it puts you in a situation where you can either sit back and wait, or you can get proactive, as I've talked about many times here on the show, and really attack the crisis instead of letting the crisis attack you. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is you and I connected through LinkedIn, and we talked a little bit about how you've attacked this crisis and used it to sharpen your skills personally and kind of prepare you for when things, loosen up and get back to the way we'd like them to be, even though normal is never going to be the same again. Greg, tell me a little bit about what your mindset was and what caused you to be proactive instead of reactive in this situation.
So this was definitely a different time for me, and the first time really in my adult life where I've felt sort of rudderless. I've always had the fortune of having a job or 2 or 3 since about sophomore year of high school. So I've never had this much time off. So at the beginning, it was just really hard to figure out how to not go crazy. I mean, there was only so much video games or reruns of The Office I can watch until I sort of lose it. But it just seemed like I needed to do something constructive. And throughout, especially my previous job at the state, I worked with so many, techie people, programmers, coders, and so many different walks of life. I always knew enough of certain things to sort of get by with my job. But I always figured that'd be cool to just know more. So I started with looking at where I could learn coding and programming. Luckily, one of the tools I used, Codecademy, had a special offer. They were giving away memberships to people that had recently been laid off or furloughed. So sort of a kind of scholarship, if you will, for a couple months. So I took advantage of that, along with, I'd had a bunch of things I've downloaded or paid for previously about lessons of this or that I'm just like, I always put these off, so might as well take the time to do it now, because what else am I going to do?
Yeah, yeah, and good on you for doing that. You mentioned in your LinkedIn post where you and I connected originally several tools that you've kind of found that have been valuable to you. I want to take a little break, and then I want to come back and talk about each of those. Does that work for you?
Sure thing.
Awesome. Okay, guys, since we started the Destination Marketing Podcast a little over a year ago, I've had several destinations reach out and say, hey, could you help me start a podcast? And at first we were kind of like, well, no, that's not really what we do. But after enough requests, we said, you know what, let's explore this. And we've created a turnkey program for destinations where we will produce, we will host, we will edit, and we will publish your podcast for your destination on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. And all you have to do is show up and answer some questions. We're really excited about this program. We've got a few destinations that have been doing really, really well with their podcasts. And if you've ever thought about creating a podcast for your destination, but you don't have all the equipment, or you don't have the expertise or any of that type of stuff, let us take that off your hands. Let Relic handle your podcast creation and production, and all you have to do is show up and answer questions about all the amazing things there are to do within your destination. So let me know if you're interested. Email me at adam@relicagency.com, and we'll get you set up on this podcast program. Okay, Greg, we teased out some of the tools that you found beneficial to you as you try to continue to sharpen and develop your skill set while you're furloughed. Tell me some of the tools that have been really valuable to you.
So I'd have to start with the well-known Destination Marketing Podcast.
World famous.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. It has definitely been a great resource. As I mentioned, I'm pretty much a newbie to this industry as a whole. So even when I started, I was looking for something to sort of get a grasp of putting everything into context of, this massive world of destination marketing and CVBs and all the acronyms, all the everything. So the podcast definitely helped sort of hear from different people in roles like mine, people that are in the hospitality industry on the other side of my desk, essentially, and just sort of getting a feel for what other places are doing and how they're doing things. And it was definitely eye-opening to sort of see that and understand where to start and where to sort of aim for.
How'd you find the podcast?
I think it was just one day searching random terms, and luckily that's such a great keyword there that, I just kind of popped up and I thought, oh, all right, I'll give this a try. And there were a few other podcasts too that I would dabble in, and I just sort of had this in the rotation on my commute to and from work. And it was definitely the short, bite-sized episodes of about a half hour, 45 minutes that made it easy to sort of get everything all in one shot with it. Now, the worst thing is the podcast that kind of, you have to chunk up yourself, and then you kind of forget where things were. And everything was kind of bundled just right.
Got it. Okay. Well, as much as it would benefit me to spend another, 15 minutes talking about why you love the podcast, we'll move on to some of these other tools. You mentioned Codecademy, Moz, HubSpot, Udemy. Tell me a little bit about how you've used and leveraged each of those.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, with Codecademy, it was a lot of that was the best place I found for learning about some programming and coding. So I had the super basics of like HTML, CSS, and all of that through various freelance work of websites and my previous work with the state's relaunch of the website. But since everything's through content management systems now or certain other GUIs, you don't see the nuts and bolts of things, so I never bothered to really dig deeper. But it was definitely interesting to sort of dig through much more advanced HTML work and CSS to really make those things from scratch, as well as sort of getting into some data visualization tools. Previously, too, we made a bunch of custom dashboards for our content. So seeing how to take our Google Analytics and pipe it in through different warehouses was really cool to sort of understand that stuff.
That's a unique skill set to have, to be able to connect the data to those dashboards. I know there's a lot of business intelligence tools out there. Which one were you using?
So we were using, now the name is blanking on me, Superset. We use Superset to sort of connect our GA data through there to then make very pretty and also digestible charts that were used to actually rank different pieces of content on a scale of 1 to 4 to sort of hone in on what could be better improved.
Great, great. Superset. Okay, I'm not familiar with that one. I'll have to go check it out.
Yeah, and I believe it was open sourced, and I think free, or there must have been a free version, or at
Now I
least
really
very,
want
very
to check it
affordable.
out. Well, I know that you guys at Providence Warwick, you also have SimpleView as your website platform that you're built on. Do you feel like your work with Codecademy and some of these other tools helps you to work better within that framework and make edits easier? And, has that been beneficial as it pertains to using a SimpleView site?
Yeah, I'd never used SimpleView until I came over to the CVB, and it does have a lot of tools built in. It was a little more difficult to sort of navigate at first from my previous experience with WordPress and Drupal. So it was different, but sort of the same with like a block based system. But I think with the added knowledge of what I've learned the past few months can help sort of make those blocks work even more to our advantage. So just the simple thing of adding hyperlinks through HTML in certain places where you couldn't actually just click on it and add the link manually, and just sort of making sure the code is clean as well. And that was another learning point in some SEO courses I took, was the way that the code is formatted can really mean a big difference of where your page ranks, because when Google crawls it, they're looking for specific formats. So if you're not matching that, you may not be as high as you could be if you just sort of clean it up.
Got it. Okay, good. Tell me about Moz.
So basically Moz, HubSpot, and Udemy, I sort of bucket together as I use it a lot for SEO and just general digital marketing and marketing strategy courses. There's a bunch kind of picking here and there. And it was really interesting to see how much of that I'd already learned or done just on the jobs kind of stuff. As I mentioned, I don't have any formal training in marketing because of the crime and justice background, but a lot of the stuff I've done has sort of been geared towards content marketing, just kind of a different name or under a different umbrella. So the big thing with working for a state website is you don't have to actually fight for that Google ranking, because luckily with a .gov at the end of your URL, you're going to the top almost no matter what. So
Yeah.
so it was interesting to learn more about what really made you come to the top of those search listings when you don't have that kind of firepower behind you, and just really honing in on certain things like titles and just refreshing content, which was another thing that was new to me coming to CVB. Of, there's a lot of things that happen yearly, so we're just kind of refreshing content each year to have the updated information, but there's certain other little things that you can do to really make that pop and really make sure that stays at the top of certain searches.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that I really love about HubSpot, and I'm glad that you used HubSpot as one of the resources that you found valuable, because they create so much educational content. HubSpot is an email automation provider, right? But their content goes so much deeper. It's so educational. And I feel like destinations from a funnel standpoint, like from a marketing funnel standpoint, sometimes struggle to understand messaging at each phase of the funnel, at awareness, consideration, and purchase. And I think HubSpot does such a great job of not only explaining each phase of the funnel, but also helping you understand how to leverage email to move people along, to nurture people along through each stage of the funnel. Did you get a chance to dive into kind of the email portion of the HubSpot courses?
I didn't dive much into the email portion. I had on the surface, but it was more focused on just the website side of things. But it's definitely, they're well known for their email. So I'm hoping to maybe make that round 2 of the learnings and sort of look at how we can leverage that for some email marketing on our end.
Yeah, awesome. I think you'll find a lot of value there for sure. Well, Greg, it's been interesting to hear you talk about how you used these tools and courses to sharpen your skill set. What do you think it is that helps you keep this good attitude of progress as you approach this crisis?
I think one of the big things is just having this routine. Um, the first week or so of furlough, it was sort of a time meant nothing almost, where it was just
Yeah.
sort of, you didn't know how to fill the day. So having this routine of sort of getting up, walking the dog, having coffee and breakfast, watching the news, and then sort of diving into a couple lessons for a few hours, and then taking a break, and then maybe getting back to it, or then switching over to either reading a book or doing something else, going out. It really just helped make it feel like uh, each day was constructive in some way, of not just sitting around and thinking, "What can I do?" It really helped having that routine and really having the framework of almost a normal day.
Yeah, getting rid of some of that idleness that can kind of cause the negative thoughts and you know I don't know. To me, whenever I'm idle, that's when the depression can can sink in. So always doing something and being active, whether it's with your mind or your body, I think that's a great way to kind of avoid some of the negativity that can come out of situations like this.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm the person that even on a scheduled day off, I'll feel antsy if I'm not checking my email or if I'm not doing certain things. So it's definitely a strong need to be doing something rather than just kind of
Yeah.
wondering what can I do.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, there's got to be plenty of people that are, I mean, with a 51% unemployment rate in the industry right now, there's got to be a lot of people listening that are going through similar challenges to you. What advice would you give somebody that's going through these same challenges? I mean, not everybody is a coder, right? Or can learn the new types of language to use on the website and things like that. So if I'm trying to figure out how to find educational materials so that I'm not idle, how would you go about finding those?
I think a lot of it is just sort of dependent on, even not dependent on what your job is now. My big kick in the pants to go for this was just not knowing what the new normal was going to be like. So sort of thinking of a skill that could just be found remotely, and then just sort of Googling a few things of what I do. And then I think a big helpful thing for me as well was sort of writing down sort of a diary each day of things that I'd done and things that I would like to do the next week or the next month. Just sort of focusing in on what I haven't had the time or have told myself I don't have the time to do, and just sort of going for those, even if they have nothing to do with what I do currently for a job, or even if they weren't job related per se. Just trying to make this time worthwhile by finding what I've been putting off and sort of just going right at it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I like the diary example that you use and advice that you give, because I've found that I'm so much more productive when I start out the day understanding what my priorities are going to be for the day, and then I end the day looking at what my priorities are for tomorrow. And lots of times so much can happen during the day that it blows up my priorities and I've got to start all over at the end of the day. But having those in writing really helps with progress, and not only having progress, but being able to look back on each page and say, here's the progress that I've made,
Oh, for
which
sure.
is encouraging.
Yeah, it's definitely, even back in the office days, I mean, there's so many times where you set the agenda for the day and you look back and think, I didn't do any of this. But when you go back and think of what did you do, it wasn't like you had idle time or you wasted the day. Things were done. So it's good to look back and reflect on the accomplishments of each day.
Great. Great. Well, tell me what you plan to learn next. What's on your roadmap? What's written down in your diary as the next thing that you want to learn or tackle?
So the next thing is actually a bit of I guess a bit of a history lesson. I'm a big history fan, and I've been here in Rhode Island for about 3 years now, and still I don't know much about its history. I live in a waterfront town now in Warren. A lot of history apparently, but I don't know much of it outside of plaques that are sort of strewn across the town. So I'd really like to dig into what interesting sort of niche history the destination in Providence has, and sort of think of how we can relate that to probably future blog articles, or just what makes the city tick that you wouldn't really know without kind of having to dig for it. I like that little history hunt of those little special nuggets.
Yeah, I love that. You sharpened your skills, and now you're going to sharpen your knowledge of the destination so that you can apply it even more. Great plan.
Thanks.
Well, Greg, okay, so if anybody that's listening today said, I like the skills that guy has or that he's learned, that sounds interesting. How can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. Was probably the top two.
So give me your Twitter handle.
Sure. It is at Desrosiers 93.
And spell your last name for those that are listening.
Sure. So it'll be GDESROSIERS and then the number 93.
Perfect. Okay. And on LinkedIn, you're easy to find using the same spelling. So that's great. I would love for anybody that has additional questions, especially, about Moz and how you used Codecademy and Udemy. I think that would be really cool to network and reach out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd love it.
Well, Greg, tell me what the next 6 months look like through your eyes. Obviously, none of us have a crystal ball and know what to expect. But, from your perspective, what do you see?
So I think there's going to be a lot of creativity, which, under better circumstances, I'd be more excited for. But I am excited to see the opportunity for really throwing out a playbook. And since I'm not familiar with the playbook still, I think it's a really exciting time to see what we can do through different channels that maybe were overlooked or never looked at previously to really attract most of that drive market, but then sort of expand it as we can when it's safe to do so. But I think the next 6 months are really going to be focused on the drive market. Luckily for us, it's a good portion of the country. And at the very least, we have New England to really target. So I think it's really going to be a time to try new things, probably fail at some of them, but then see what worked, what didn't, and really retool ourselves and get ready for next year. And, one of the big things that we had just started before everything happened earlier this year was some pre-built itineraries. So we have lots of pages about what you can do outside, indoors, vegan-friendly restaurants, things to do with a family, rainy day things, summer day things. So nothing really that had a one-stop shop for that kind of stuff. So I think that's really important for drive marketing too right now, is give them a quick little, here's what you can do in one single day. Here's what you can do in a short weekend. So I think those kind of pre-built itineraries are going to be helpful.
Yeah, I think you've hit on something here, because so many people now that are listening are transitioning to drive markets as their new target persona. But have we revamped our content and our experience to match those people? Because so much of our marketing, and I would say industry wide, has been, hey, let's get people from far away to come because they spend more money, they book more nights and all that kind of stuff. But now the drive markets have become popular again, and yet our content on our website doesn't match that persona. And so I love that point that you're making there.
Yeah, and I think another key part of that is the staycation kind of mindset of, we have Providence as the city, but if you live just a town or a few towns over, it could make sense to maybe make a quick little trip, spend one night at potentially discounted rates right now because hotels need to fill rooms, and just sort of experience the city from a tourist point of view, even if you're not a tourist, even if you live or work in the city or live in the city. It could be a fun time to kind of escape the day-to-day and just kind of live it up the way someone new to the city would feel.
You're speaking my language, Greg. Experience it as a local. I mean, that the experience has changed, right? Like, so many of the restaurants that people are used to going to are either closed now, or they're not. They're doing takeout instead of dine in, and so the entire customer experience has changed. So the idea of going in and re-experiencing the destination with the new experience and understanding where those gaps are, where the holes are, and what we need to improve, I think it's critical.
Oh, of course.
Well, Greg, this has been fun. I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk to us a little bit about how you're staying sharp during a time like this.
Oh, my pleasure. It was fantastic.
Well, great to chat with you, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Well, everybody, this has been another great episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating or a review. That really does help us to continue to grow the show. Other than that, we'll talk to you next week. Okay, everybody, we've been talking about recovery for a while now, and my team at Relic has been working on recovery campaigns for several destinations over the last couple of months. They've actually developed a pretty amazing, we'll call it an algorithm, to know when it's safe to do acquisition marketing in a market. And so what I mean by that is you've got government regulations, you've got how is the virus affecting that market, whether there's been a decrease in cases or a decrease in deaths in that market. When is it safe to advertise, hey, come to our destination? Like I said, our team has come up with this algorithm to provide that information for you, and we're offering a free market report. We're calling it Recovery Triggers. And if you'd like a free Recovery Trigger report for your target market where you want to draw visitors from, please email me directly at adam@relicagency.com, or you can go to recoverytriggers.relicagency.com and we'll get you set up with a free report, and we even have the ability to send you a weekly recurring report so you can see what's happening in that market on a weekly basis and make sure you're launching your acquisition campaign at the perfect time.